From a teenage actress hiding her real age to a 65-year-old stuntman crashing through saloon doors like it was nothing, F Troop wasn't just a silly Western comedy. It was pure chaos behind the scenes. This 1960s sitcom featured a tribe name that started as a dirty joke, a captain whose career was launched by the man who would become Mr. Spock, and a show that somehow beat Star Trek in ratings, only to get canceled anyway. There were blind lookouts guarding forts, accidental war heroes, and guest stars who turned the Wild West into something straight out of a horror movie. And believe it or not, some of the funniest moments on screen were completely improvised. Here are 20 strange facts you never knew about F Troop, 1965. 20. It became a cult classic later. When people talk about strange TV success stories, F Troop always finds its way into the conversation. At first glance, it looked like just another goofy Western comedy, light jokes, silly situations, and over-the-top characters. But here's the strange part. Its real success didn't fully happen during its original run. Instead, it quietly built something much bigger after it was gone. When the show originally aired in the mid-1960s, it had solid ratings and a loyal audience. Viewers enjoyed its fast-paced humor and the way it poked fun at traditional Westerns. Still, despite that popularity, it ended after just 2 seasons. At the time, it felt like just another short-lived sitcom. Nothing about its early cancellation hinted that it would stick around in people's memories for decades. But then something interesting happened. Once the show entered reruns, a whole new audience began to discover it. Local TV stations started airing episodes again and again, and suddenly, people who had missed it the first time around became fans. Its unique mix of slapstick comedy, clever writing, and memorable characters made it easy to rewatch. Unlike many shows of its era, the humor didn't feel too dated. It still landed. Over time, F Troop built a reputation as a hidden gem. Fans appreciated its absurd style, its fearless jokes, and the chemistry between its cast. Conventions, fan clubs, and nostalgic TV discussions kept its name alive long after its final episode aired. What makes this truly strange is how a show that ended so quickly managed to grow stronger over time. Instead of fading away, it turned into a cult favorite, proof that sometimes success doesn't follow the usual path. Before we move on, I'd make sure to subscribe to the channel for more hidden TV facts like this. 19. The Hakawi tribe were the smartest characters. One of the strangest and most surprising things about F Troop was how it portrayed the Hakawi tribe. At a time when television often showed Native American characters in very simple or stereotypical ways, this show flipped the idea completely. Instead of being confused or powerless, the Hakawi were actually the smartest group on the entire show. Led by Chief Wild Eagle, played by Frank Dakova, the tribe ran clever business operations right under the nose of the U.S. cavalry. While the soldiers struggled with basic tasks, the Hakawi were busy making deals, running secret enterprises, and outsmarting almost everyone they encountered. It created a funny but also unusual dynamic where the supposed authority figures were clueless, while the tribe had everything under control. Their intelligence wasn't just shown in 1 or 2 scenes, it was a consistent theme throughout the series. Whether it was trading schemes, hidden partnerships, or simply understanding situations better than anyone else, the Hakawi always seemed one step ahead. This gave the show a unique comedic twist, where the audience quickly realized that the real brains of the operation weren't the soldiers at all. What makes this even more interesting is how ahead of its time it felt. In the mid-1960s, this kind of portrayal was rare. The humor didn't come from mocking the tribe, but from showing how much smarter they were than everyone else. And it added depth to the comedy and made the show stand out in a crowded field of westerns. Instead of following the usual formula, F Troop quietly broke expectations in a way that still feels fresh even today. 18. The show parodied serious westerns. Back in the golden age of television, westerns were everywhere. Most of them were serious, dramatic, and focused on bravery, honor, and intense conflicts. Then came F Troop, which decided to take that entire genre and turn it upside down. The show was loosely inspired by films like Fort Apache, which portrayed the U.S. cavalry in a heroic and disciplined light. But instead of copying that tone, F Troop did the exact opposite. It presented a fort full of incompetent soldiers, ridiculous situations, and leaders who barely knew what they were doing. From the very first episode, it was clear that this wasn't going to be a typical Western. Orders were misunderstood, plans fell apart instantly, and even the simplest missions turned into chaos. The comedy came from watching something that was supposed to be serious completely fall apart in the funniest ways possible. What made this approach so strange was how bold it felt at the time. Westerns were one of the most respected genres on television, and making fun of them wasn't exactly common. Yet F Troop leaned into the parody fully, exaggerating every trope, from heroic speeches to dramatic battles, and turning them into jokes. This mix of satire and slapstick helped the show stand out. It wasn't just telling funny stories, it was commenting on the genre itself. And by poking fun at the idea of the perfect soldier and the glorious frontier, it created a completely different viewing experience. Even today, that playful parody is one of the reasons the show still feels unique. It didn't follow the rules. It laughed at them. 17. Larry Storch improvised his lines. If there's one character who truly brought unpredictable energy to F Troop, it was Corporal Agarn, played by Larry Storch. And one of the strangest secrets behind that character is how much of his humor wasn't even in the script. Larry Storch was known for his quick wit and sharp comedic timing. Instead of strictly following the written dialogue, he often added his own lines, reactions, and little moments that made scenes feel more alive. This improvisation gave Agarn a unique personality, confused, loud, and hilariously unpredictable. On set, this created a fun but challenging environment. Other actors sometimes had no idea what Storch was going to say next. That surprise often led to genuine reactions, which made the comedy feel more natural. Instead of rehearsed jokes, viewers got moments that felt spontaneous and real. His improvisation also helped shape some of the show's most memorable catchphrases and expressions. Agarn's way of speaking, his exaggerated confusion, and his sudden emotional shifts all came from Storch's creative input. It turned the character into one of the standout figures of the entire series. What makes this even more impressive is how well it fits the tone of the show. F Troop was already chaotic and unpredictable, and Storch's style only added to that energy. Rather than disrupting scenes, his improvisation made them stronger and funnier. And in many ways, Corporal Agarn became iconic not just because of the writing, but because of the freedom given to the actor. It's a great example of how sometimes the best comedy happens when actors are allowed to play, experiment, and surprise everyone, including the audience. 16. Forrest Tucker was much older than his role. Television often asks actors to play characters younger or older than their real age, but F Troop took this idea to an interesting level with Captain Wilton Parmenter's superior, Sergeant O'Rourke's commanding officer, played by Forrest Tucker. Tucker was already in his mid-40s when the show began, yet he played a character who was meant to fit into a much younger, more active military setting. On paper, it might seem like a mismatch, but once you watch the show, it somehow works perfectly. A part of the reason is Tucker's larger-than-life presence. He brought a mix of authority and comedy that made his character believable, even if the age difference didn't exactly line up. His deep voice, confident delivery, and natural timing helped sell every scene he was in. Another factor was the overall tone of the show. Since F Troop was never aiming for realism, small details like age didn't matter as much. The focus was always on humor, exaggerated situations, and strong character dynamics. Tucker fit right into that world. Interestingly, his maturity may have even helped the show. Surrounded by more chaotic and goofy characters, his presence added a sense of structure, even if that structure constantly fell apart in comedic ways. This kind of casting choice is part of what makes the show feel so unique. And it didn't follow strict rules or expectations. Instead, it focused on what worked best for entertainment. And in this case, having an older actor in a younger role didn't weaken the story. It made it even more memorable. 15. Bob Steele played an Alamo survivor. One of the strangest running jokes in F Troop comes from a character who should not even exist, at least not historically. Trooper Duffy, played by Bob Steele, proudly claims that he survived the famous Battle of the Alamo. Now, anyone familiar with history knows that no defenders actually survived that battle, which makes his claim completely impossible. That's exactly where the humor comes in. The show never tries to explain or correct the statement. Instead, it leans into the absurdity, allowing the character to repeat this claim as if it were perfectly normal. It becomes one of those blink-and-you-miss-it jokes that rewards viewers who catch the historical error. What makes this even more interesting is Bob Steele's real-life connection to Westerns. He was a well-known actor in classic Western films long before F Troop. In fact, he had appeared in movies related to the Alamo story earlier in his career. So, in a strange twist, the joke works on two levels, both within the show and as a nod to his past roles. This clever layering of humor is part of what made F Troop stand out. It didn't just rely on physical comedy or simple punchlines, it also played with history, audience expectations, and subtle references that added depth to the jokes. In the end, Trooper Duffy's implausible story isn't just funny because it's wrong. It's funny because the show fully embraces how ridiculous it is, are turning a historical fact into a memorable comedic moment. 14. The delayed insult running gag. Comedy often depends on timing, and F Troop mastered one of the simplest yet funniest timing tricks through the relationship between Sergeant O'Rourke and Corporal Agarn. Played by Forrest Tucker and Larry Storch, their interactions created one of the show's most memorable running gags. Here's how it worked. O'Rourke would say something that sounded like a compliment on the surface, but was actually a clever insult. Agarn, not exactly the quickest thinker, would initially smile or agree, completely missing the hidden meaning. Then, a few seconds later, it would hit him. His expression would suddenly change as he realized he had just been insulted. That delayed reaction became the punchline. Instead of delivering the joke instantly, the show stretched it out, letting the audience enjoy the moment twice, first when the insult was delivered and again when Agarn finally understood it. What made this gag so effective was consistency. It happened often enough to become familiar, but never felt repetitive because of the actors' performances. Each time, Larry Storch added a slightly different reaction, confusion, shock, or exaggerated anger, keeping it fresh. This kind of humor might seem simple, but it requires strong chemistry between actors. Tucker's smooth delivery paired perfectly with Storch's expressive reactions, creating a dynamic that viewers loved. In a show full of chaos and fast-paced jokes, this slower, character-driven gag stood out. It proved that sometimes the funniest moments come not from what is said, but from when it is finally understood. 13. A Beatles joke was hidden in a character name. During the mid-1960s, Beatlemania was everywhere. Music, fashion, and even television couldn't escape the influence of the Beatles. And somehow, even a Western comedy like F Troop found a way to sneak in a clever reference. The character in question is Ringo Starr, a soldier known for having the worst luck imaginable. At first, the name might sound like just another quirky addition to the show's lineup, but look a little closer and the joke becomes clear. It's a playful parody of Ringo Starr. This kind of reference was subtle but effective. It didn't interrupt the story or draw too much attention to itself. Instead, It acted like a hidden wink to the audience, especially those who were familiar with pop culture at the time. He had added an extra layer of humor without needing a full setup or explanation. What makes this detail so interesting is how it connects two completely different worlds. On one side, you have a comedy set in the Old West. On the other hand, a global music phenomenon is shaping modern culture. Bringing those together in a single joke shows just how creative the writers were. It also reflects how aware the show was of its audience. By including references like this, F Troop stayed connected to what was happening outside the screen, making it feel more current and relatable. In the end, Rango Starr isn't just a funny character. He's a reminder that even in a setting filled with cowboys and cavalry, there was still room for a little rock and roll humor. 12. Vincent Price played a vampire. It's not every day that a legendary horror actor steps into a Western comedy, but that's exactly what happened on F Troop. Vincent Price, famous for his chilling roles in classic horror films, made a guest appearance that completely flipped expectations. He played Count Sforza, a mysterious character who strongly resembled the kind of vampire roles Price was known for. The twist, however, was that this episode didn't air during the Halloween season or any spooky time of year. Instead, it appeared in a regular broadcast slot, making the whole concept feel even more unexpected. The episode itself leaned heavily into parody. Rather than trying to be scary, it took the familiar elements of vampire stories, dark clothing, strange behavior, eerie presence, and turned them into comedy. Watching someone as iconic as Vincent Price embrace that humor added a special charm to the performance. What made this appearance so memorable was how perfectly it blended with the tone of the show. F Troop was all about taking serious ideas and turning them upside down, and casting a horror legend in a comedic vampire role fit that approach perfectly. For fans of Price, it was a rare chance to see him in a lighter, more playful setting. For regular viewers, it was simply another strange and funny situation in a show full of them. Moments like this highlight how unpredictable F Troop could be. Just when you thought you knew what kind of story you were watching, it would surprise you with something completely different, and somehow make it work. 11. The canon gag was a signature joke. Every great comedy has that one recurring joke you start to expect, and still laugh at every single time. In F Troop, that honor goes to the infamous canon gag. No matter what was happening in the episode, there was always a good chance the fort's cannon would misfire in the most chaotic way possible. The setup was simple, but the execution made it unforgettable. Someone would try to use the cannon for a routine purpose, maybe a signal, maybe defense, and within seconds, everything would go wrong. The cannon would explode, spin around wildly, or blast something completely unintended. And almost every time, part of the fort would end up damaged or destroyed. What made this gag so effective was its consistency. Viewers began to recognize it as a signature moment, something that tied the episodes together. It became part of the show's identity, almost like a visual catchphrase. You knew it was coming, but you never knew exactly how it would play out. The physical comedy also added to the humor. The timing, the reactions, and the exaggerated destruction all worked together to create a scene that felt bigger than the usual TV comedy moment. It was loud, messy, and perfectly in line with the show's chaotic tone. Even more interesting is how this simple gag helped define the fort itself. Instead of being a strong, secure place, it felt fragile and constantly falling apart, just like the people running it. In the end, the cannon wasn't just a prop. It was a symbol of everything F Troop stood for: plans going wrong, authority failing, and comedy exploding right when you least expect it. 10. Ken Barry created his own physical comedy. One of the reasons F Troop felt so energetic and different comes down to the unique talents of Ken Barry. While many actors rely entirely on scripts and direction, Barry brought something extra to the table. He helped design his own physical comedy. Before becoming an actor, Barry had a strong background in dance. That training gave him excellent control over his movements, balance, and timing. Instead of just delivering lines, he used his whole body to create humor. Falls, stumbles, and exaggerated reactions all became part of his performance style. What makes this especially interesting is that the scripts often gave him room to experiment. Rather than spelling out every action, certain scenes were left open, allowing Barry to choreograph his own comedic moments. He would turn a simple situation into something much bigger, adding layers of humor through movement alone. This approach made his character, Captain Parmenter, stand out. He wasn't just funny because of what he said. He was funny because of how he moved, reacted, and interacted with his surroundings. Whether he was tripping over obstacles or reacting to chaos around him, his physical performance added energy to every scene. It also helped balance the show's overall style. While other characters delivered verbal jokes or clever lines, Barry's physical comedy brought a visual element that kept things fresh and engaging. In many ways, his contribution went beyond acting. He helped shape the rhythm and feel of the show, proving that sometimes the funniest moments don't need words at all. 9. Captain Parmenter's promotion was a total accident. In most military stories, promotions are earned through bravery, skill, or leadership. But F Troop turned that idea completely upside down with one of its strangest character backstories. Captain Wilton Parmenter, played by Ken Barry, didn't rise through the ranks because of heroism. He got there by accident. According to the show's story, Parmenter was involved in a chaotic battle where everything went wrong. At one critical moment, he sneezed. That's it, a simple sneeze. But somehow the soldiers around him misunderstood it as a command to attack. They charged forward, won the battle, and gave Parmenter full credit for the victory. As a result, he was treated like a war hero. He even received a Purple Heart and a promotion, despite having no idea what he had actually done. This ridiculous misunderstanding became the foundation of his character, setting the tone for everything that followed. What makes this so funny is how seriously it's taken within the show. No one questions the story, and Parmenter is placed in charge of a fort despite clearly lacking the skills for the job. It creates a constant contrast between his reputation and his actual abilities. This backstory perfectly captures the spirit of F Troop. It takes something as serious as military honor and turns it into a comedy built on pure coincidence and confusion. Instead of a confident leader, viewers get a well-meaning but clueless officer trying to live up to a reputation he never earned. And that gap between expectation and reality becomes a never-ending source of humor. 8. The lookout could barely see. In a military setting, having a sharp-eyed lookout is essential. Someone needs to spot danger from a distance and warn everyone in time. But in F Troop, even that basic responsibility becomes a joke through the character of Private Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's vision is unbelievably poor, so bad that he often mistakes enemies for animals and animals for enemies. Instead of providing safety, his reports usually create confusion and panic. One moment, he's calling out a threat, and the next, it turns out to be something completely harmless. This running gag adds another layer to the show's theme of total incompetence. The fort isn't just poorly managed, it's practically blind to what's happening around it. And that makes every situation feel unpredictable. What makes Vanderbilt's character especially funny is how seriously he takes his role. He genuinely believes he's doing a good job, even when he's clearly not. That confidence, combined with his constant mistakes, creates a perfect setup for comedy. The reactions of other characters also play a big part. They rely on his warnings, only to realize moments later that they've been misled again. This cycle repeats throughout the series, becoming one of its most recognizable jokes. In a way, Vanderbilt represents the overall condition of the fort, unprepared, confused, and always one step behind reality. Yet instead of creating tension, It creates laughter. It's a simple idea, but it fits perfectly into the world of F Troop, where even the most important roles are handled in the most hilariously wrong ways. 7. Canceled for business reasons, not popularity. At first glance, it might seem like F Troop ended because it wasn't doing well. That's usually how TV cancellations work. But in this case, the truth is much stranger. The show actually had solid ratings and a loyal audience when it was suddenly taken off the air. The real reason had nothing to do with viewers losing interest. Instead, it was tied to behind-the-scenes business decisions. Around that time, Warner Brothers went through a major change when it merged with 7 Arts. This shift brought new priorities, and unfortunately, F Troop didn't fit into the new plan. One of the biggest factors was cost. Filming in color during the mid-1960s was expensive, and F Troop relied heavily on visual comedy, sets, and outdoor scenes. Maintaining that level of production required money and space, both of which became limited after the merger. Studios also needed room for new projects. Even though F Troop was performing well, it was seen as something that could be replaced with newer shows. It was a practical decision, not a creative one. What makes this situation so unusual is how it goes against the typical story of a canceled show. There was no major drop in quality, no sudden loss of audience. It simply became a victim of timing and corporate strategy. In the end, F Troop didn't fail. It was pushed aside. And that's what makes its early ending feel so strange, especially considering how much popularity it gained later through reruns. 6. The show beat Star Trek in ratings. It's hard to imagine today, but there was a time when F Troop was outperforming shows that would later become legendary. During its original run, it managed to pull in stronger ratings than Star Trek and even Gilligan's Island. At the time, F Troop was one of the top comedies on ABC. Its fast-paced humor, colorful characters, and unique take on the Western genre made it stand out. Viewers tuned in regularly, making it a reliable performer in the network's lineup. What makes this fact so surprising is what happened afterward. While F Troop ended after 2 seasons, Star Trek and Gilligan's Island went on to become cultural icons. They built massive fan bases, inspired spin-offs, and stayed in the spotlight for decades. Meanwhile, F Troop took a quieter path. It didn't disappear, but it didn't reach the same level of global recognition either, at least not immediately. This creates a strange contrast where the show that once led in ratings ended up being remembered as the underdog. It also highlights how unpredictable television success can be. Ratings during original broadcasts don't always determine long-term legacy. Sometimes shows that start small grow bigger over time, while early hits fade into the background. In this case, F Troop winning the ratings battle is a forgotten victory, one that feels even more surprising when you look back at how history played out. 5. Buster Keaton. Praised Ken Berry. Getting recognition in Hollywood is one thing, but being praised by a legend is something else entirely. And that's exactly what happened on F Troop when Buster Keaton took notice of Ken Berry. Keaton, known as one of the greatest figures in silent film comedy, was famous for his incredible physical humor. His style relied on precise timing, controlled movement, and creative stunts, skills that very few performers could truly master. So when he saw Berry's performance, he recognized something special. After watching an episode, Keaton personally reached out to compliment Berry's work. That kind of acknowledgement carried huge weight, especially coming from someone who had defined an entire era of comedy. What makes this moment so meaningful is how closely Berry's style matched Keaton's tradition. With his background in dance and movement, Berry brought a similar level of precision to his physical comedy. Falls, reactions, and timing all felt carefully crafted rather than random. For the show, this connection added an extra layer of credibility. It showed that beneath the silliness and chaos, there was real skill involved in creating those comedic moments. In a way, this praise connected two generations of comedy, one from the silent film era and one from television. And it confirmed that even in a light-hearted show like F Troop, there was talent worthy of legendary recognition. 4. The old drunk was a real stunt legend. In a show full of exaggerated characters, Old Charlie might seem like just another funny background figure. But behind that role in F Troop was a surprisingly impressive real-life story. The character was played by Harvey Perry, a man with a long career in Hollywood stunt work. By the time he appeared on the show, Perry was around 65 years old, an age when most people would have stepped away from physically demanding roles. But instead of slowing down, he continued to perform stunts, bringing authenticity to even the smallest moments on screen. Oh, that's what makes this fact so strange. Viewers watching Old Charlie might assume the character's clumsy or exaggerated behavior was just part of the act. In reality, the actor behind him had spent decades performing dangerous scenes in films and television. His presence added a subtle layer of realism to the show's physical comedy. Even though F Troop was all about humor and exaggeration, having someone with real stunt experience helped make those moments feel more believable. It also shows how the show blended different types of talent. Alongside trained actors and comedians, there were performers like Perry who brought a completely different skill set to the table. In the end, Old Charlie wasn't just a funny side character. He was a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected people on screen have the most impressive stories behind them. 3. Wrangler Jane was secretly underage. Television casting can sometimes involve surprising choices, but one of the most unusual stories from F Troop involves Wrangler Jane, played by Melody Patterson. When she auditioned for the role, Patterson claimed to be older than she actually was. In reality, she was only 15 years old at the time. Somehow, she managed to secure the part before the truth came out. Eventually, the producers discovered her real age. At that point, they faced a difficult decision. Recasting the role would have caused delays and complications, but keeping her meant working around legal and production challenges. In the end, they chose to keep her. Her performance, screen presence, and the timing of the production all played a role in that decision. However, adjustments had to be made. Scripts were carefully handled, and certain scenes were shaped to fit her situation. What makes this story so interesting is how smoothly everything turned out. Despite the unusual circumstances, Patterson became a memorable part of the show. Her character fit naturally into the world of F Troop, and many viewers never realized anything unusual had happened behind the scenes. It's one of those rare cases where a risky situation didn't lead to problems, but instead became part of the show's unique history. 2. Ken Barry was mentored by Leonard Nimoy. Before becoming the charming and slightly clueless Captain Parmenter in F Troop, Ken Barry had a very different journey into Hollywood, and one unexpected connection helped change everything. During his time serving in the U.S. Army Special Services, Barry met a fellow performer who was also working in entertainment roles for the military. That person was none other than Leonard Nimoy, long before he became famous as Spock on Star Trek. At the time, neither of them was a big star, but Nimoy already had experience navigating the early stages of an acting career. Seeing Barry's potential, Nimoy offered guidance and encouragement. He helped him understand how the industry worked, and even assisted him in making connections with Hollywood studios. That kind of support can make a huge difference, especially for someone trying to break into such a competitive field. With Nimoy's help, Barry was able to take the next step and eventually sign with Universal Studios. That opportunity opened doors and set him on the path toward television success. Not long after, he landed roles that showcased his talent, leading directly to his casting in F Troop. What makes this story so fascinating is how it connects two very different television worlds. On one side, you have a light-hearted Western comedy. On the other hand, a groundbreaking science fiction series. Yet both share this quiet behind-the-scenes link through friendship and mentorship. It's a reminder that sometimes success isn't just about talent. It's also about the people who believe in you early on and help you take that first big step forward. 1. What the tribe name was originally a risky joke. One of the strangest behind-the-scenes stories from F Troop isn't about a character or an actor. It's about a name. The Hakawi tribe, one of the show's most memorable elements, almost had a very different and much more controversial name. Originally, the writers came up with the name Fugawi. On the surface, it sounded unusual but harmless. However, the joke was hidden in how it was meant to be heard. When spoken in a certain way, it hinted at a phrase that was considered inappropriate for television at the time. When executives at ABC reviewed the idea, they quickly realized the potential problem. Television standards in the mid-1960s were strict, and even subtle jokes like this could cause issues with audiences and sponsors. As a result, the name was rejected before it ever made it to air. To fix the situation, the writers changed the name to Hakawi. It kept the same playful sound but removed the risky undertone, allowing it to pass network approval. Interestingly, the humor didn't disappear. It just became cleaner and more acceptable for a wide audience. This small change ended up shaping one of the show's most recognizable features. The Hakawi tribe became a central part of the series, known for their cleverness and unique role in the story. What makes this fact so interesting is how close the show came to including a joke that might never have made it past censorship. Instead, a quick adjustment turned a potential problem into a lasting piece of television history. And there you have it. 20 strange, surprising, and downright unbelievable facts about F Troop. From hidden jokes and accidental heroes to behind-the-scenes secrets that sound crazier than the show itself, it just proves one thing. This wasn't your typical sitcom. Now I've got to ask, which fact shocked you the most? Was it the teenage star lying about her age, the blind lookout guarding the fort, or the show beating Star Trek in ratings? Drop your answer in the comments, I really want to know. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't just sit there like Private Vanderbilt on lookout duty. Hit that subscribe button before it misfires like the cannon. Stick around for more weird facts, classic TV secrets, and stories you won't believe actually happened.